Welcome to a very special web edition of Cuse Countdown. I'm your host, Max Chadwick, alongside my analysts, Mason Horodyski and Will Scott. Here on the spring semester of Cuse Countdown, we usually preview the next Syracuse men's basketball or men's lacrosse game. As of right now, there is no next Syracuse men's basketball or men's lacrosse game. In fact, the entire NCAA has suspended operations in addition to the NBA, MLB, NHL, and other professional sports leagues. This is all due to the coronavirus pandemic, which has infected over 130,000 people around the world with close to 5,000 deaths. Congressional Dr. Brian Moynihan expects up to 150 million Americans to contract the virus, which is more than 45% of the U.S. population. Of course, this is so much bigger than sports. We are going to try to look at this pandemic through an athletic lens. And guys, I don't know about you, but this has been the most wild 48 hours of sports that I can remember.
There's nothing really to compare this to. I mean, as analysts, our job is to be able to find comparisons to things that have happened in sports, but this truly just feels like a moment in time that we've never experienced, and I doubt we'll ever experience something like this ever again.
3 days ago in sports, felt like everything was normal. You had conference tournaments going on, teams clinching NCAA tournament bids. Hofstra, Boston U were both going to the tournament. And now you look at what's happened over the past 48 hours. I mean, yesterday with the NCAA announcing that March Madness would be played without fans. Less than 24 hours later, they announced that there is no March Madness. It just all progressed very quickly and so suddenly.
So we mentioned how the NCAA shut down. Of course, that also means the NCAA men's and women's basketball tournaments. The NCAA announced today that for the first time since the tournament began in 1939, there will be no March Madness. And guys, March Madness has been a staple of my life. And now for the first time ever, there will be no March Madness. It just feels so weird. It feels like almost like a imaginary world that we're living in right now.
Again, like I kind of said before, it just doesn't feel real. None of this feels real. I've never, ever seen anything like this. And again, I doubt we'll ever see anything like this again. It's hard to put into words how I feel about this because like you said, Max, March is supposed to be a special time for everyone, especially us. Pulling back kind of the fourth wall a little bit here. As college students, this is one of the best times that we're supposed to be having right now, enjoying March Madness, enjoying our time here at Syracuse University. And now it's kind of hard to be able to do that, especially since it's gone.
And you have to feel sorry for the players, too, that we're looking forward to competing for a championship, competing on the big stage. They won't have an opportunity to do that. And the seniors as well, with all sports. This is not just a basketball cancellation. You've got lacrosse, softball, baseball, all spring sports, tennis, you name it, all canceled.
So let's look at the timeline right now. And you can see at 12:06, the SEC announced that they were canceling the tournament. 4 hours later, basically, the NCAA tournament was also canceled, guys. It's been a wild 4 hours, a wild day, a wild 2 days of sports.
And the Big East tournament, that was canceled at halftime of the Creighton-St. John's game. I mean, those players were in the halftime locker room thinking they might be coming out for the second half. St. John's was hoping to pull off the big upset. They didn't have an opportunity to do that.
And then you kind of had teams that beat them to the jump, like Duke and Kansas, who pulled out of the NCAA tournament even before. These are precautions that you have to make in a time like this, but again, it's still, from our perspective as sports reporters and analysts, this hurts.
Absolutely. So let's read the statement from the NCAA right now. So the NCAA released a statement saying, today, NCAA President Mark Emmert and the Board of Governors canceled the Division I men's and women's 2020 basketball tournaments, as well as all remaining winter and spring NCAA championships. This decision is based on the evolving coronavirus public health threat, our ability to ensure that events do not contribute to the spread of the pandemic, and the impracticality of hosting such events at any time during this academic year, given ongoing decisions by other entities. Now, obviously, this is bad news for every player, coach, and fan of college basketball, but I want each of you to tell me which team or which player do you feel for the most?
Well, first and foremost, I feel for all the seniors that are out there that won't be able to experience such a special time in their college athletic career, basically. But the guy in particular that I feel the worst for is probably Udoka Azubuike. I mean, the guy was supposed to be flying in his mom to the Final Four if Kansas was going to make it, which they very well had a very good shot at making it.
Had a chance to win it all.
Absolutely. Yeah. And he was a guy that has come from Nigeria, has only seen his mom twice since moving to America to go play at Kansas. It would have been a special moment for that. And again, it's just like everything kind of today, just taken away right out of the blue.
For me, the team I feel sorry for the most is probably the Dayton Flyers. Number 3 ranked team in the country, had arguably the best player in the country in Obi Toppin, averaging 20 points a game. They might never have a better chance to win a championship ever. I mean, this was the best Dayton team ever, 29-2 record. I mean, I was going to pick them to go to the Final Four in my bracket, and Obi Toppin probably NBA bound, so they're never going to have a better chance to win a championship. And when you have a team like Dayton, an Atlantic 10 team, that's that good, that's a rare thing.
A legit national championship contender.
Mm-hmm.
All right, this show is called Cuse Countdown, so let's move on to how this affects Syracuse basketball. Last night's win over North Carolina was the final game of Syracuse basketball, which seemed destined for the NIT.
Yeah, I mean, they put on a great show in that game. They ended up avenging that loss earlier in the season to UNC by a long shot. This felt great, and I was out with friends watching this game last night, and it's the first time in my 4 years here at Syracuse that no one cared about a Syracuse game when it was on when I was out watching it. It was insane.
And you got to keep in mind, they played that game after the news in the NBA hit with Rudy Gobert being diagnosed, and then that really just set off a chain reaction from all these sports leagues. The NBA suspended play shortly after that news hit. So like you said, it just didn't really feel like anyone really cared about the game last night. Obviously it was good to see Syracuse play well, finish the season strong, but it's just one of those things where it's something that's much bigger than sports.
So let's look at the top 10 of the ACC right now. It's been a weird year for the ACC, to say the least. I mean, Florida State was the best team in the conference, but usually the ACC is the powerhouse of college basketball. This year, though, not so much.
Yeah, and that's a little bit surprising. Normally the ACC gets like 8 or 9 teams in. I think only maybe 4 or 5 would have gotten in this season. Syracuse was the number 6 seed in the ACC tournament. They were going to play a Louisville team. Another team that was denied a chance to compete for a national championship.
It is a really, really strange year for the ACC. Kind of like you said, you expect a plethora of teams in this conference to be able to make March Madness. But look up on the board right now. 5 of those teams are at 500 or worse.
And one team that's missing there is usually a powerhouse in the North Carolina Tar Heels, who were the worst team in the conference this year. I mean, it was a bizarre year for the Tar Heels, for the ACC, and now for college basketball. But this affects more than just college basketball. Every other sport is suspended indefinitely due to the coronavirus outbreak, including college lacrosse. It started with the Ivy League announcing that it was canceling its lacrosse season. 3 of the top 5 teams in the country were in that league, and then multiple other conferences followed suit before the NCAA announced a full cancellation of the postseason in college lacrosse, with most conferences postponing its regular season. And guys, after playing less than half a season, there are plenty of questions as to whether or not players will get another year of eligibility.
Well, I mean, I really hope they do, especially the seniors, but it's hard to really see how that's even possible. Would they be able to still enroll in the university afterwards? How is this even going to be a thing? There's just so many questions and uncertainties that we're all still going through in just about every facet, not just of sports, but in kind of life right now. And I think the questions is what's really exhausting people right now as well.
Right, and scholarships also come into play there, which would make for a complicated thing for the NCAA and these conferences to have to deal with. But you saw the Ivy League yesterday announce that they were canceling all spring sports, and people were like, wow, shocked by that news. And the Ivy League, 3 of the top 5 lacrosse teams in the country, and then, again, a day later, everyone's done, not just the Ivy League.
This obviously is incredibly disappointing for the team we cover here. Syracuse, the Orange, are currently ranked number 1 in the country, and we're looking to win their first national championship since 2009. Guys, what was your gut reaction from a Syracuse perspective when you found out the season would be over, basically?
Felt like robbery. I mean, this team was special. The season that Chase Scanlon in particular was having this year and doing what he was doing offensively was something we haven't seen out of a college lacrosse player in a very, very long time. This felt like the year for Syracuse, and it's not the year for anybody anymore.
I felt like Syracuse was unbeatable. I didn't think they were going to lose a single game. I thought they were going to go all the way to the Final Four, national championship game, and win the whole thing. So this is just absolutely devastating for Syracuse fans who haven't seen a lacrosse championship in quite some time. It's been over a decade since the Orange won the national championship.
Well, that's about all the time we have here on this special Cuse Countdown webisode. With all the sports postponed or canceled, this is likely the last piece of content that our sports department will produce this semester. And it's also the last piece of content our whole station will put out until classes resume. I want to thank our sports director, Will Shea, and all of our producers, Calvin Cristoforo, Jacob Morris, Tate Sigworth, and of course, our fearless leader, Matt Bonaparte. I also want to thank all of the seniors who work in our sports department. You will be missed, but never forgotten. Finally, I want to thank my 2 analysts next to me. Will, it was a pleasure working with you, and we're going to have a lot of fun next year. And Mason, you were an awesome analyst this year, man, and we're going to miss you so much. I'm your host, Max Chadwick. Look, it's been a wild 48 hours, but it's time for all of us to come together. On behalf of everyone at CitrusTV, our thoughts and prayers go out to everyone impacted by the virus. Stay safe, hug a loved one, and have a great night.